Don't come with something which is a simplistic definition of Sharia and do what Murray is doing, which is using this controversy to nurture an Islamophobic discourse.
Right.
The people around us. This is exactly what you are doing, Mr.
Do you think
Murray.
it's Islamophobic to point out that we think that women should be treated equally to men?
Let me finish.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be checking out a video where Douglas Murray debated an Islamic scholar on the influence of religion, particularly Islam, in the West today. I believe this is going to be a very educative one. Let's start with the video. Go.
You are about to see Douglas Murray tell the truth as it is. Douglas Murray debates a panel of Muslim scholars on the influence of religion, particularly Islam, in the West today. Douglas Murray speaks what is on most people's mind today in the West, but what most are afraid to say. Douglas Murray did not hold back.
Can I ask you on a question of fact? Apostasy, denying the faith, is punishable by death under Sharia law, isn't it?
No. Look. Once again, you are
Is that true or not?
Following in
is
the
it true or not?
Can I answer? Because you are asking question, and when Murray is talking, you let him talk, and when I am talking, you don't let me finish.
Well, then I suggest you answer the question, please.
I am answering the question, telling you that you are following in the footsteps of Mr. Murray, coming with a perception of Sharia that it's monolithic and there is no room for interpretations. Your understanding of apostasy is not the only Islamic answer, and I and others, the Mufti of Egypt recently said, you know, that you can change your religion and you are not going to be killed. So don't come with something which is a simplistic definition of Sharia and do what Murray is doing, which is using this controversy to nurture an Islamophobic discourse.
Right.
The people around us. This is exactly what you are doing, Mr.
Do you think
Murray.
it's Islamophobic to point out that we think that women should be treated equally to men?
Let me finish.
Douglas Murray's assertion in the debate underscores a significant point about the critical discourse surrounding Islam, particularly in Western societies. When discussing Sharia law and its prescriptions for apostates, Murray highlights a tendency among some advocates and scholars to deflect criticism by labeling it as Islamophobia. This tactic, according to Murray, serves as a barrier to genuine understanding and transparent discussion about certain aspects of Islamic law that are at odds with modern secular values and human rights. The term Islamophobia is intended to describe prejudice against Muslims, but it is often employed in debates to sidestep sensitive topics such as the legal ramifications for apostates under Sharia. According to classical Islamic jurisprudence, apostasy, the act of abandoning Islam, is indeed considered a grave sin, and in some Islamic traditions, warrants capital punishment. This is not an obscure interpretation, but a mainstream one across several major schools of Islamic thought, including the Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali schools. These schools provide the jurisprudential basis for the majority of the Muslim world's approach to Sharia. Statistically, the application of such laws is not uniform across the Muslim world. For instance, while countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran explicitly impose the death penalty for apostasy, others may enforce less severe penalties, but still ostracize or imprison individuals who renounce Islam. A 2013 report by the Pew Research Center found that in many countries with Islamic laws, a significant proportion of the population supports the death penalty for Muslims who convert away from Islam, highlighting a prevalent approval of strict apostasy laws. This critique extends beyond the specific issue of apostasy to a broader concern about the difficulties faced when critically discussing elements of Islam in public discourse. The accusation of Islamophobia is frequently used to inhibit open dialogue rather than to protect against genuine prejudice. This impedes the capacity for societies to have honest discussions about how certain interpretations of Islam interact with, and sometimes contradict, contemporary values of freedom and human rights.
Let me finish. The people should understand, and our fellow citizens should understand, that the Muslims are not asking for a parallel system, and there are many interpretations relating to Sharia, and it's much more open than that, and don't come with something which is a superficial discourse. I'm sorry to say,
Suhaib Hassan was on the television last Sunday night.
Which is not acceptable.
Last Sunday night, Suhaib Hassan from the Islamic Sharia Courts of Britain was on the televisions across this country on Channel 4, saying that
But
he would like in the end for people to be flogged, beheaded, hands chopped off, all that stuff. We know that's where it leads, Mr. Ramadan. We know where that's where it leads.
You are just using the controversy to spread fears in the British society.
There is a good reason to be fearful of Sharia, Mr. Ramadan.
Let's just take this back. Before we argue about interpretations of Sharia, and this is one of the many problems, as even you acknowledge, Mr. Ramadan, there are so many interpretations. The key to this is a belief somehow that hundreds of years of removing religion from the legal process of this country should somehow be reversed. And that's a thing that's very hard for a lot of people to take.
Nobody is asking this. The great majority of the Muslims are saying something else. When, for example, in the British law, there is justice for everything, for everyone, equality before law. This is our Sharia. We don't have a problem with this. When you are telling me, and I'm telling you, I'm respecting the British law, because within the British law, there is equality before law. This is our Sharia. So don't come with a nurture this perception that we have a closed system which is against the British system. This is simply not true for the great majority of the Muslims living in Britain and in Europe. This is not true. This is what people like Murray are using to build the walls between the people and nurturing a rejection of Muslims.
It is the case, is it not, that there are all sorts of exemptions that people are entitled to on the profession of religious belief. For example, doctors being required to perform abortions can object on religious grounds. There are all sorts of religious institutions, quasi-religious courts in this country. The Jews have them, for example. Why shouldn't the Muslims?
We should clear up this for a start, which the Archbishop of Canterbury has also got wrong, which is that Jewish courts in this country are first of all informal and secondly voluntary. They do not have any rights that supersede or stand equal to British law. The Sharia notion is that it stands not only equal but superior to British law. The Jews have just been thrown out by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Nobody is asking this.
As something which has sacrificed the rest of it. This is a totally different thing. This, if you want to throw Islamophobia around for Mr. Ramadan, let's talk about the anti-Semitism of the notion that you say, why not give the Sharia to
hang on, guys. Just both of you, hold on a second or two.
In the debate over the implementation of Sharia in the UK, Douglas Murray presents a compelling argument against establishing it as a parallel legal system alongside British law. Murray's concerns are rooted in the potential conflicts between the two systems, particularly in areas where Sharia contradicts the foundational principles of British jurisprudence, such as equality before the law, women's rights, and the rights of minorities. Sharia law, as interpreted and applied in various Islamic contexts, often diverges significantly from UK law in several key areas. For example, in matters of inheritance, Sharia typically offers women half the share that men receive, which directly contradicts UK laws that mandate equal rights to inheritance regardless of gender. Similarly, in family law, Sharia grants fathers predominantly more rights over children than mothers, which stands in stark contrast to UK family law that aims for gender neutrality and focuses on the welfare of the child. Moreover, the implementation of a parallel Sharia system raises significant concerns about the fragmentation of legal standards and the creation of communities living under different laws. This can undermine the cohesion and unity of the legal framework and potentially lead to legal pluralism where different people are treated differently under separate systems for the same legal issues within the same country. Historically, and in contemporary settings where parallel legal systems exist, such as in parts of Nigeria where both Sharia and secular laws are in place, there has been significant strife and conflict. In these environments, the existence of parallel systems often exacerbates social divides and leads to tensions and even violence, as differing groups may feel that there is an imbalance in justice and legal outcomes. This, ultimately, is not just about looking after the rights of certain groups, but the push from Islamists to turn the UK and the West into Islamic states. This is as clear as daylight, and we should expose it.
Wow. What an interesting and a very heated debate. As we know, Douglas Murray always say that Islam should not be given a double standard, that Christianity is open to criticism. So Islam should also be open to criticism, not when someone tries to say something about Islam, they call it an hate speech or they call it Islamophobic. That's what Douglas Murray is trying to say. And Douglas Murray talks about the Sharia law, that if the Sharia law is going to be implemented in UK, that is not in support of that. But the Muslim activist is trying to justify his argument by saying the British law is very much similar to the Sharia law. That the British law talks about equality, same way the Sharia law talks about equality. But Douglas Murray is trying to say in this video that there is no way you can compel the British law with the Sharia law, that both of them are going to conflict against each other, that people can be living in same country and be judged by different laws, that is not going to be acceptable. That if people are going to be judged, they should be judged by one unique law, not to be judged by different law whilst they are living in the same country. And Douglas Murray mentioned a point that in most Muslim countries, that most crimes are punishable by death. Even when you try to denounce Islam in most Muslim countries, that there is a punishment for that. And we all know in Britain, everybody have the right of religion. You have the right to choose whichever religion you are okay with. Meanwhile, in Muslim country, it's not the way it is in UK, according to Douglas Murray points, that even those the crime of denouncing religion is punishable even by death in some Muslim countries, though the punishment differs according to the country. There are some countries the punishment are not so severe as death. Maybe you might be in prison, while some country is punishable by death. That looking at this law that tend to ignore the equality of the people, that tend to ignore the freedom of speech of the people, that tend to ignore the freedom of expression of the people, that you can't compare this law and you can't say this law is similar to British law. There is no way this law is similar to British law. British law preach about equality. British law preach about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, which Douglas Murray believe the Sharia law is totally against it. That people can be in the same country, then be judged by different law. That's the point and the fact Douglas Murray have stated, that is totally against the implementation of Sharia law in Britain, Sharia law in UK, that imposing or implementation of Sharia law in UK, that they are trying to make they are trying to make Britain an Islamic country, and it's not going to accept that. That is totally unacceptable according to Douglas Murray. And I feel British as a country, its identity is embodied, British identity is embodied in British culture, is embodied in British tradition, is embodied in British value. As we all know, UK is a Christian country, because majority of the people are Christians. Let me say majority of the people are Christian. So UK is a Christian country. Then bringing a Muslim law to implement in a Christian country, I don't think I don't think that is the right thing to do. Because I believe you come into UK or coming into Britain, you have to be able to adjust yourself to accommodate the people law. You have to be able to adjust yourself to accommodate the people tradition, the people culture, the people values, in order for you to be able to live in Britain. You don't have to come to Britain with your own imported culture, imported values, and try to impose it on the people. That is totally unacceptable. That's the fact Douglas Murray is trying to prove in this video. And I believe just by listening to Douglas Murray, I've really learned a lot. As we all know, even in the Muslim law, they permit women to cover their face, wearing the burqa and wearing the niqab, whilst even in Britain right now, the citizens are expressing their grievance over the wearing of the niqab, over the wearing of the burqa, and whilst in the Sharia, whilst in Islam law, that is totally acceptable. I believe every country has its own identity. The Muslim countries, they have their own identity, and that is permitted in the Muslim countries. But in Britain, that is not known as a Muslim country, they also have their identity, despite the fact that they permit the freedom of rights for you to be able to be in any religion you want. They permit the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, but it's not a Muslim country. UK is a Christian country. So they have their own values, they have their own culture, they have their own tradition. If you know you want to live in Britain and you feel you want to live in UK or in Britain and you feel their culture, their tradition, their norms, their values is against your belief, then I think it's better you go and live in your own country. Because living in your country, no one is going to question your behavior. No one is going to question you wearing a niqab or wearing a burqa or doing any sort of things that is permitted in Islam. No one is going to question your behavior. But in a situation whereby you are living in another country that it's not your country, it's not even a Muslim country, you have to be able to abide by the people law, by the people culture, by the people value. I've really learned a lot just by listening to Douglas Murray. So I would also like to hear your comments. Do you think the Sharia law should be implemented in UK? And do you think people should be judged, people living in one country should be judged by different laws? Keep the comments coming. Don't forget, click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. Do have a nice day.
Yeah.